by seeing it. Some people are auditory. They want an explanation. They need the sequence. Step 1, step 2, step 3. Explain it to me. And then some people are kinesthetic. They need to feel it. They need to physically do it. Now, in the context of my martial arts school, who thinks that may come up frequently? Where I've got a room full of 25 children. And some of us are watch kids. We want to watch you do it, coach. And some kids are auditory kids. Explain it to me. Where does my foot go? How do I? They need lots and lots of words. Who thinks the visual kid gets twitchy if you explain to the auditory kid too long? Do I have any parents in the room? Who's got more than one kid? Who's got one who's visual, one who's auditory? Yeah, wait, you're going to laugh more in just a minute. The third learning style is kinesthetic. Kids who need to do it, right? And these are the kids who won't watch you, and they won't listen to the explanation either. You show them the bike, they jumped on and fell off 5,000 times. But they intuitively knew that there's no amount of watching you that's going to help me. And there's no amount of you explaining it to me that's going to help me. Because I'm kinesthetic, I need to do it. Now, with that brief explanation, how many of you already kind of know which one you tend to be? Right? Okay, now, real quick, hands down. That means you tend to communicate that way. Which means at any given time, you're turning off 2/3 of your audience. If I'm a visual person, I tend to use visual language. I talk about how things look. I talk a little bit more quickly. And I tend to paint pictures with words because I'm visual. But I'm not necessarily helping the auditory people because I'm not talking about how it sounds. I may not be minding the resonance in my voice, which is going to be very important to them. How many of you ever heard someone speaking and said, yeah, it was really good content, but I couldn't stand their voice? Why? And now the message is broken down. Or kinesthetic. If you're talking to someone who's a kinesthetic type learner, they need to know how it feels. They want concrete examples, right? They want you to be specific in that way. And so it's important for you to mind that as you're building presentations or as you're considering your communication with other people. If you're speaking to a group, I think there's great value in saying, do I have visual components? Am I addressing this from that perspective? And then I would go back to the beginning of my speech and say, am I addressing the auditory components? Am I making my point in a way that makes sense to a visual person? Am I making my point in a way that makes sense to an auditory person? Am I making my point in a way that makes sense to a kinesthetic person? And it doesn't mean that you're writing 3 speeches. I think all of us have a certain amount of redundancy. We repeat ourselves. There are different ways we become a thing. Break out a thesaurus, use some different adjectives. But understand, if you ignore one of those components, you're tuning certain people out. And you're not able to reach everyone. If you're speaking to an individual person, it's not incredibly difficult to figure out what their preferences are. It's what they tend to do all the time. If somebody talks really, really fast and they want to tell you how everything looks, they're probably visual. How does that look? What do you think about that? Come take a look at this. What did you see? That's a visual person. So just mimic that a little bit when you communicate with them. They will be more comfortable. You will be building rapport with them. Is this manipulative? No. It's respecting. I am respecting the fact that you communicate differently than I do. And I am intelligent enough and competent enough to be flexible enough to adjust my communication in a way that is more palatable for you. You know, if there's a guest in your home and you like spicy food, do you serve them the spiciest food you can find? And if you were to serve them something that were to suit their palate, would that make you manipulative? Or does that mean you're respecting your guest? Right? It's my job as a communicator to try and bridge the gap. So I would look at your communications and say, is this a visual person? Is this an auditory person? Is this a kinesthetic person? Am I framing my message in a way that's going to be easy for them to assimilate and understand? So we talked about 1, 2, 3, 4. One was trust, 2 kinds of trust. Competency trust, character trust. And we talked about 3, visual, auditory, kinesthetic learners. Next, 4. Those of you who like to take notes, and some of us like numbers, I'm sure. They're for easily 2,500 years now, there has been and I'm sure you've seen it. If I had a whiteboard, I would show you. But we've all seen where someone draws a line like this, and then they draw a line like this, and there's a vertical axis and a horizontal axis, and then they draw a line down the middle, and it's 4 quadrants. How many of us have seen something taught in 4 quadrants? How many of us have seen more things taught in 4 quadrants than we care to remember? Yeah. This is one of those. And that those are frequently used for personality styles. Right? And they used to do them by bodily fluids. That was the original. The oldest method of that was some people were phlegmatic and some people were more violent. It was right around Socrates' time frame. And it's been reworked I don't know how many times. Some of them are incredibly complex. Who's ever seen one of these Myers-Briggs things? How many of you really, really like them? How many of you thought, my, this is cumbersome? Yeah. Now there are some people, again, because that's their learning style, they love it. Most of them are accountants and lab scientists. That's the way that they work in the world, and so that makes perfect sense to them. They love minutia. However, for those of us who don't love minutia, that's a really cumbersome tool. The others that I've seen where they break them into 4 quadrants are hard to remember. They're difficult. They're sort of abstract and arbitrary. Some people are red, and some people are blue, and some people are yellow. And that doesn't mean anything to me. Yellow didn't matter to me, and I thought, I think there's value in this. But I don't know that we're sharing it with one another in the way that's the most palatable. The most effective way to share this information, and I didn't invent this, it's an adaptation, is with animals. And again, it sounds like a little kid thing, but I think it's going to have value for almost everyone in here. Some people are lions. And they're big, and they're loud, and they're powerful. Some of us call them bullies, especially if they're not lions. And their answer to everything is be loud. Who knows people who are like that? I'm big and I'm loud. And if you don't like my way, I'm going to get bigger and louder. That's my answer. Why? Because I'm a lion. That's what lions do. Roar! Some people are beavers. Beavers measure everything 20 times before they cut anything. And then they check the dam, and then they check the lodge. And then they go back and they check the dam, and then they go back and they check the... Who knows these folks? Nice people, but they have 85 million questions, don't they? Again, those are the lab scientists we were talking about earlier. Right? That's the kind of accountant you want. Good folks. They want their details. But can you see where there might be a conflict if there's a lion? The lion goes, do this, roar, and the beaver goes, but how? The lion goes, roar, go do it. And the beaver goes, wait, I need more details. The lion goes, what details? Roar! How many of us are beavers? We've had that conversation with the lion. How many of us are lions? We've had that conversation with the beaver. And we both thought the other one was wrong. Right? Because if I'm visual and you're auditory, you're wrong. And if I'm a lion and you're a beaver, you're wrong. How many of us do that? Well, raise your hands, you liars. Everybody does this. This is what people do. Some people are golden retrievers. Nice, sweet, kind, gentle people. You kick them, they apologize. Has anyone ever had a golden retriever? Are these not just the sweetest animals on the face of the earth? Who knows some people who are kind of that way? Like you hate to watch other people mistreat them because they're such mushballs, right? Right. But they do remember it. They do keep score. And then they do passive-aggressive stuff and get revenge later. Isn't that terrible? It's like reading people's minds, right? And then the last group are otters. And otters like to play. Otters like to play. Can you see how the otters make the beavers crazy? Because the beavers want their details, and the otters are like, what details? Yeah! And they're both in the water, and they're both mammals, but boy, oh boy, we don't get along. And so I would suggest, or I would invite you, when you're communicating with an individual human being, well, is so-and-so an otter? Or is so-and-so a beaver? Is so-and-so a golden retriever? Have I been lioning this golden retriever? Have I been the bully and I didn't realize it? Or have I been a golden retriever and I'm taking everybody's junk and then I blame them for it? It's like, no, it's my fault that I take your crap. Right? And that would be to look at those relations. Right? How does a beaver get along with a golden retriever? How does a beaver get along with a lion? How does a beaver get along with an otter? And I'm not going to keep you here and draw all those little lines. You're all, I'm certain, intelligent enough. But take that and apply it in your individual communications. Lions, otters, beavers, golden retrievers, which am I? Which do I tend to be? And I'm sure some of you are thinking, oh, I'm all of those. Everyone is all of those. That's besides the point. There's one that you tend to prefer.